Hi, I want to start tonight by talking about that feeling that you might get when you realize that fitting in comes at a price. Specifically, I'll talk about how that predicament looks for women of color at undergraduate institutions. Okay. 6 years ago, I was finishing my sophomore year of college, and I'd spent about a year and a half as a math education major. I didn't have the best advisor or great relationships with my professors. My dad, he's an engineer, and I was really looking forward to being able to bond with him over having similar degrees. But for more reasons than one, I felt emotionally and mentally exhausted by my experiences in the math department. Looking back, I can't tell if it was being called the nigger in class or having my advisor tell me that people like me tend to do better and find more success in the humanities. But in any case, I switched from math and I graduated with a BFA. Since then, a lot of those things haven't really changed. Things like having racial slurs hurled at me and having my skills boxed in based on how I look is something that I continue to deal with today. Over the past 15 years, there's been an influx of women of color to undergraduate institutions. As you can see, at the bachelor's level, there's been a 63% increase in the degrees awarded. Similarly, at the master and PhD level, there's been 67 and 60% increases, respectively. In that same time, research into the experiences of women of color on campus has become more prevalent, but the spaces that women of color continue to navigate haven't evolved to include them yet. One barrier women of color students face is hegemony perpetuated in academia. Hegemony, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is a form of power that's based on one group's domination and ascendancy, which situates that group as the norm in a diverse society. In academia, normal tends to mean white and male, and for women of color, that's an impossible bar to reach. This discrepancy forces women of color to navigate a system that's not designed with them or their success in mind. Contemporary scholars call this process of navigation the racial opportunity cost. Racial opportunity cost specifically refers to the high price that students of color pay in pursuit of academic success. Examples can include things like performing racelessness, feeling isolated from their peers and their culture, or feeling like the representative of their race. Another example is forfeiture of goals. In my experience, I had a plan, but it didn't go the way I expected for one reason or another. I failed to perform racelessness. I couldn't live apart from my community, and I wasn't prepared to give up those parts of myself in order to join the proverbial club. Sometimes it's really hard being a woman of color on campus. It can feel like an endless battle that you can't win and isn't worth fighting. It can feel hopeless, but it's not. There's so much that all of us, everybody in this room can do, not just the brown folks, to combat this. Inclusive anti-racist education is one of the first steps. It's important that we have these discussions and make these changes because the effect it has on students will transcend the classroom. We also need to support students who are in this situation. It's important that they feel validated and that they feel heard. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, we must act. We all play a role in disrupting the status quo. So when you see that something can be better, it's on you to work and make it so. We can combat academic hegemony by tearing it down and then rebuilding academic culture with all people in mind, but especially those who are historically alienated by the culture of power inherent in academia. Thank you.